right, everybody. Well, not everybody. This is sort of the this is the pre-stream stream, right? Just I thought I'd get on a little early, and if anybody new had any burning questions about where to find what they're looking for or anything like that, before Tuesday's orientation, or something that would be easier to describe on screen than in the forum, I just thought I'd come on early and hang out and answer anything I can before we start working on the material. So we're going to get started in about 10 minutes. Usually I'll play through a version of the tune at the beginning of the stream, but I'm all warmed up and ready with my drop D tuning. And I've been working on getting the remake of Crow Jane going on, so that's also going to be, so I'm just living in drop D right now, and I suppose you will be too. I think we did correct I'm going to check and see, yeah. Tim fixed Tim Klausnitz, who's been helping me with the tab and the layouts and stuff. He, if you're on the site, if you're going to download the PDF, it's still called version 1.0, but I forgot to mention that it's in drop D tuning, right? Which a few people had questions about, and so it now, if you are, I'll point this out when everybody's here, but if you look on up here at the beginning of the first page of exercises, it now has the tuning. This is drop D tuning, right? You lower the first string down, the sixth string down from E to D. So just, I forgot to mention that. It's not the first time. I've just sort of taken for granted that everybody knows it's drop D, but it's a good thing to point it out. So also, just if you're new, I'm going to put this in the chat too. If you're brand new here or just came back, let us know. Okay. Well, here's a good question from Josh. Josh, welcome. I know you're brand new. Do I recommend working on more than one song at a time? There's so much material that's tempting me. I have opinions about that, but I'm going to let some of your fellow members weigh in first about that. I will say this: my short answer is, the new song has the advantage of you can be, each week as you work on the material, you have like many opportunities to check in like this and ask questions, and many opportunities to post in the forum where other people are working on the same stuff. That said, if you are going to go back and look at other stuff, you can't post in a live stream about it directly because those live streams are archived. But there's still, just as much material and just as much explanation about how things are going. So I would say, if you want to get, the main reason I would say to do something different or parallel at the same time is just if you want to work on something like a steady bass song, because this is alternating thumb, right? So if you want to sort of have something, a palate cleanser, right? Then, maybe pick a steady bass song. Or if you just want to be doing something that's not in drop D all day when you practice, because the other song you could work on is you could start looking at Crow Jane, and in May, we'll start having some live streams about that. But the two reasons would be just to get some variety into your practice, right? So that you're not all in the same key or you're not all in the same groove. All right, nice to see all these new folks. Anyway, that's my short answer, and I'll let other people weigh in on what they think, what their experience has actually been trying to do more than one thing at a time here. Okay, Brian, also new, welcome. The orientation session, okay, so there will be one live orientation every month. I've scheduled them to be on the Tuesday following the first lesson stream of the month. So next Tuesday, I think it's the 8th is when we'll have the first one. And I'll do maybe 15 or 20 minutes of a screencast where I'll put the website up on screen, and I'll just sort of like help you find where everything is, show you just how to get around. And then it'll just be wide open for questions. Less about teaching stuff, more this kind of thing about like, should I do this or that? Technique questions, just anything that's not really part of the basic lesson stuff. Although, usually the lesson material takes about a half an hour, and we stay on for an hour mostly. So there's usually time. First priority are questions that are about the material of the week. But after that, time permitting, I'll answer questions about whatever you got. Okay, so if I'm saying this right, Peyo. I've seen this now a few times in the stream, but I don't know where Euskadi is. So or how to pronounce that. So let me know, because I'm totally curious. All right, some more new folks. This is great. Okay, well, so for you new folks, String Dojo is the online handle for a student named Ruben, who we're all excited to see back because he was here for 2 or 3 years, I think, and a very enthusiastic and active participant. And he is back after about a year hiatus. So that's what that's. So he's sort of halfway new and halfway not. Paul Clark, brand new. All right, first day of school. I like it. Jerry, also new. Welcome. And Steve. And I see some other names that I don't know inside out. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say your name, Stook, but welcome. And Dave, you're back. Great. Dave Swenson. Man, lots of new folks. This is great. And 4-Inch Cats, that's Morgana. You're back. Hope you don't mind. I quoted you in a recent newsletter. I didn't use your last name, though, so nobody can stalk you in Melbourne. And I know that's not how you pronounce Melbourne, but that's how I pronounce it because I'm American. Jerry and Jody, you're back after a short break, I think. So anyway, lots of familiar names. This is great. And also, if you're new, this is a good place to just mention like why you joined or what you're hoping to work on, what you want to get better at. You can also post that in the forum as well. And I know a lot of new folks have already started posting in there. Let's see. Good. Here's some comments about how people are using it. Scott made it to your first live stream today. Awesome. And Abraham Smith. Yeah, I saw you posting a couple streams ago. Okay, here's a technique question from Josh. In Nobody's Dirty Business, I noticed some of my notes seem to cut out early. Oh yeah, you posted about this. That's a really good question. I'll go and watch your post again because I know you posted the video, which was really delightful. Like, I love that you did the vocals and everything and put a whole arrangement together. So that was cool. Between the Gulf of Mexico and Greenland. Okay. That sort of helps. Now at least I know where you stand spiritually, if not literally. Yeah, I'll have to go and watch and see what you're doing, Josh. Try to figure out what the deal is. But yeah, I mean, I like to get sort of a percussive bass, and I tend to, I don't want stuff to ring out too much, but then, yeah, you do have to kind of balance that, with what's going on in the melody. And so you might, if you haven't already, and you probably did, but if you haven't already, just try to rest your thumb on the bass strings and just play the melody with your fingers. Slow it down, all that stuff. And just try to see, what's going on, and see if you can hear when it's getting cut off, and just play like an exaggerated version of what you're trying to do. Like, pretend that, the melody is supposed to sound like super operatic and dramatic. Play it loud and really dig in, and the more when you play louder, it sort of amplifies any problems you're having. So if you sort of just exaggerate the way you're playing it, it'll probably exaggerate the notes that are getting, like the extent to which the notes are getting cut off. And then you'll be able to sort of like look at it. Maybe even like make a video of yourself doing that practice thing of just playing the melody. And then, you know, you can do your own diagnosis of what's going on. Half of practicing is just, you know, becoming a good diagnostician, if that's the word. So, yeah, Randy, I came on early just to answer some questions and things. So, just to have a little extra time to do that. Also, so I wouldn't start late like I often do. So, I mean, it reminds me of this this tour manager that I had one time, who wasn't my tour manager, it was the manager for the tour that I was doing, to be clear. But his opening statement when he met the band and the crew was, if you're early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late. And it was really good advice, but I still haven't really assimilated it after 20 years, which is sad. Oh, excellent, from Abraham. A recent stream, you recommended working on the tune from the end. That simple suggestion got me over some tough spots in the last quarter. Excellent. Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I forget to do that too. Work your way backwards. Okay, the Redux will actually start. I updated the calendar, so I'll talk about that. I can't remember if it's the last week of April or the first week of May, but I pushed the Redux out because the tune itself is already available, and that gives you. I mean, there were votes. There were people were talking back and forth about what would be better, but I made an executive decision to push the Redux out and start it sort of staggered in May, so that we could have April to focus on Statesboro. But anybody who wants to start looking at Crow Jane can dive into the archive and find the original version. There's tab, there's short videos, and you can get familiar with the tune. I also wanted to take a little bit of time. Once I was getting ready for the Redux, I was like, I think this material could be clearer. So I actually wanted to give myself a little time to update Crow Jane a little more. So Redux. We've started doing this thing of going back and reviewing an older tune that's related to the tune we're working on right now. And so this quarter, we'll be looking at Crow Jane, which is one of the very earliest tunes we did back in 2019. And I'll play through some Crow Jane after we're done with the main lesson material. Hey, David is here, Lightroom guy. Nice to see you. Working from the end. I'll talk about that. I can talk about that more later as well. But now it's 2:31. So let's start. I'll play through a little bit of Statesboro Blues, and then we'll get rolling. Okay, so that's just the vamp, the fundamental, the embellished, and the vamp again, and then the fundamental, and then the vamp. So that's like a pretty simple way to, that's a relatively simple way to arrange it. Sorry, the AC is noisy in here. Let me turn this down. Maybe that'll help. So, you know, those are the parts that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the fundamental today, but there are short videos. And again, I will sort of pull up the website and show you where everything is before the end of today's session, just to make sure everybody can find what they're looking for. But we're going to start off with a few rudiments, just some exercises to get you warmed up for the tune itself. And then I'll go over the fundamental version. I'll go through the horizontal 3-step with that, and I'll explain what that is. And then at next week's session, we'll get into some of the embellishments. And the third week, we'll get into, you know, looking at the vamp and how to start putting things together, even though that's properly like the territory for the arranging lessons that come up in June. But we can certainly talk about that ahead of time. Okay, so let me get the tab on screen. If you don't have your own copy of the tab you can go to either the page that has today's live stream on it, and there's a little button that says click here to download, or you can go to the intro and PDF page. That also has the same PDF there, version 1.0, and you should be able to download that. But I'm also going to put it on screen right now. So what we're going to start off with, so we're in drop D tuning. So that just means taking the low E string, which would be here, and coming down 2 frets or a whole step. Right? So that means that we now have a D in the bass. So it's like a fantastic key for playing songs in D. And a couple of things just to get oriented are, well, what are the chord shapes now that we've changed the tuning? And what are we going to be doing with the thumb? Like, what's the default alternating thumb going to look like? So over on the right here, we got some basic voicings. Here's a D chord. We got the root, the fifth, and the root in the bass. And then the usual D chord stuff on top, the fifth and the root and the third. And then if we're going to switch from D to G, we want to stay in open position. We can play a G chord with the third in the bass. We don't have a G in the bass anymore, but we have this stuff. So here's the third, the fifth, the root, and the fifth, and then maybe the flat 7 on top. And there are times when you might use your index finger for the bass, and there are times when you might use the middle finger. One of the things about fingerstyle guitar is that it is much more sort of situational than strumming. So, you know, you're not always using every note in a chord, so which finger you're going to use is sometimes subject to change, and the way you're going to finger the left hand is going to depend on, well, you know, do you need this note for the particular melody you're playing or not? And if you don't, you can finger it in a way that involves less stretching. So it's just not quite as hard and fast with the fingerings as some other styles of music are. So I'm just going to put that out there as a general thing right now. And then there's a couple other ways. There's one other way we can play a G chord. We can play a G7 up here. Now, for example, here's a great example of like the logistics of playing fingerstyle. Like this note does not belong in the chord, right? This open A string. But we're not going to play like that. We're going to play like this, which means that this finger is going to damp that A string. And besides, even if we left this note open, it wouldn't really matter because we're just not going to pick that note with the thumb. We're not strumming, so it doesn't matter if that note is open or not. Same thing goes for this high string, because the underside of this finger is going to probably mute that. So we can switch between this G7 and this G over B, which we can also play as a G7. And we're going to see both of those when we get into the embellished version. Okay, now over on the left, these are your alternating thumb options, right? So for the D, we're going to go between the 6th string, 4th string, 5th string, 4th string. And that's going to be our bass. And already it's like, wow, that's like way better than having to kind of like squeeze out all the bass notes in up here, right? So That's the big payoff right away for playing in drop D. And then if we're going to go between D and G, we can go from the root and the root to the third of G and the fifth of G. So basically this exercise here is just about switching between these two chords. And then this exercise is about switching between these two chords. So we could have G in the bass and then the fifth, and then we could have the third and the fifth. And so just doing some of this, and your pinky's going to kind of ride along the B string. So it's just, you know, a couple of different ways to get used to switching between the new chord shapes in the left hand and switching, you know, making sure you know where the thumb belongs when you're doing the right hand part of it. So those are just some warm-ups to kind of get you in the zone. And then here are some syncopation exercises, because the melody to this tune, for a lot of tunes, the fundamental version will be as sort of on the beat as possible, like very straight and unsyncopated, mostly on like the 1, 2, 3, or 4. But this tune doesn't even sound like itself without some syncopation. I mean, you could play it and that would be good practice, but I always want the fundamental to at least sound like the tune, right? So we're going to do some syncopation right from the get-go. And so the first thing to do is make sure you can put one finger along with the bass and just play, in this case, a D right on the downbeats. So because everything else is a syncopation of that. Everything else is, you know, a syncopated melody is just getting offset from the downbeats, right? So if you can do this, you can then start to change up what's going on. So let me just scoot this over here. So here's an example of what that means. So if we take the notes that are on the downbeat, the note on beat 2, this guy, and the note on beat 3, and the note on beat 4, and just think of each of those as being just slid over by an eighth note onto the and of the previous beat. I know this is a very like sort of mathy numerical way of looking at it, but it's just trying to like really identify what is going on, so that instead of trying to syncopate by feel, you can syncopate on purpose. And so what we end up with here is each one of these notes gets moved over, and so we end up with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I put the bass in the wrong place on that one. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? So we can go from the first exercise on the page to the second one. And you can start to feel those notes as anticipations, as things that happen sooner than they're supposed to. And that's a big part of what gives blues in the alternating thumb style its momentum. As opposed to just sitting there on the downbeats. It's also what lets you convey the shuffle feel, the 1 and 2 and, you know, 1. Let's see, is this the shuffle or is this straight? Well, my bad, it's straight. But it gives it, without having the shuffle feel, it still gives it that kind of forward motion and momentum because of the emphasis on the ands. And then we can put in one more note on the and of 4 that wasn't here before because we didn't have room for it. So if we take this and we just fill in that last and, then we get this. So we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. So right there when it wraps around is when we're going to get and 1 and. 3 notes in a row. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So that's just a really important syncopation because it's at the heart of the way the melody to Statesboro Blues goes. Next thing to do is to take that rhythm and apply it to the challenge of changing chords, which, like we saw on the first page, is a combination of knowing where the voicing needs to be shaped with the fretting hand and where the thumb needs to go with the bass notes. So we can look at going from D to G, and we're going to have that G over B, so G with B in the bass. And we could do it like this. So this first example on this page, page 3, would be. So the thumb is going from 6th string, 4th string, 5th string, 4th string. And then it's going, when we get to the next measure, 5th string, 4th string, twice. So bass alone, and with the syncopations on top. And then, if we are going to put in that note on the and of 4, we've been trying to do it all just on one string, right? Just to sort of simplify things. But there's a really common thing that happens in this kind of alternating thumb blues where you end up playing like an anticipation on the and of 4 that's kind of more of a fill note. It's not necessarily part of the melody. Sometimes it is. We'll see it both ways in Statesboro Blues. But here, we're going to anticipate the G chord by playing an open G on the and of 4, and then we're going to anticipate the D chord by playing this A note, 2nd fret on the 3rd string, on the way back to D. So we'd have this. So this is an exercise in not just anticipating like a melody note or a beat, but basically anticipating a chord. So just kind of like getting into the chord, a little bit ahead of time. The thumb always lands on the downbeat, but sometimes the fingers get there sooner. So up to tempo, that second exercise sounds like this. And again, if I slow it down. Getting out of the way on the and of 4, or getting back in the way, and 1, and 3, and 4. So the left hand's getting to the chord on the and of 4, the thumb is getting to the chord on the next downbeat. So this is also like helpful. Like here's a really common variation for playing on a D chord, which is to, there was a question about this in the forum, which I didn't manage to, I wanted to sort of wait and address it just on the guitar instead of trying to explain in words on the forum what's going on. So this is a really common variation where the bass goes like this. So it's not a mistake. It's actually a little variation in the bass. And it's kind of temporary, it's kind of implying 1 to 4 to 1. But it's also the same thing that lets you go. It's or what's a better, like that sort of thing, or even, right? It's just, you're really still on the D chord, but it's just dropping in that bass note. So then we can practice that by putting the syncopations on top. So again, do the bass first, just go through like the thumb is doing the same thing as before, but we're rocking between this and this, basically. So you can practice this, and then you can try to put the syncopations in on top. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, one of the reasons we're going through all this is because the main riff to the tune, the melody, this the little figure that's basically what Blind Willie McTell's doing on the guitar, and it's certainly the way like people sing the song, is it's got this exact rhythm here. Ba da 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 da. Right, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, right? Those rhythms come straight out of these exercises, right? This rhythm comes right from here, and this rhythm comes right from here, right? So if you're going to go and play, so the melody would, like, I sort of left you hanging here. The last note of the melody would be over here in the next measure, right? But so, and this one the whole time during like the whole Groove Masterclass and all the videos over the last couple of weeks when I've been yelling about isolating things, right? Isolate the rhythm. This is a tricky melody to play. There's a lot going on. But if you can first break down, well, what's going on over here? And what do I need to be able to do with this guy? And then how does this match that? Then when you come to this, all you're finally doing at this point is putting in the melody notes. Everything else is done. This coordination's done, what the fingers have to do, when the thumb is doing what, where the thumb is going, and what chords you're shaping. That's all over. Like now we're just putting in the notes. We're just dropping those notes into the rhythms we have practiced. So that's basically the setup for getting going on the melody. And I will point out that in the fundamental version, we're not going to worry about this bass over here. That's coming up. We're not going to worry about that. So you don't have to deal with the fact that in this little exercise, you're having to jump around like this. So we're not going to do that until next week when we get to the embellished. But you can, of course, look at all that stuff if you want. Okay. So I'll answer one question quickly from Scott. Yeah, this is a straight feel and not a shuffle. I misspoke before. It's definitely da, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and everything's even, as opposed to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... And you'd be surprised, I know I have been as I've gone back and looked at it, just how many classic blues tunes are actually like in a straight eighth feel, you know. The adaptation of this by first Taj Mahal and Jesse Ed Davis and then the Allman Brothers turned it into a shuffle, and that's the other sort of main family of versions of this song. But the Blind Willie McTell version is straight eighths. So, we have arrived. Here's the fundamental version, right? I will play through this a couple of times, and then I'll kind of talk through a bit of what's going on. But actually, we'll take it through the whole horizontal three-step, which will be like as good a way as I need to break it down. So what this sounds like is, and you can go and, you know, if you don't want to be going fishing through the live streams, there are short versions of me playing this up tempo, at tempo, and slowly on the same page as the streams. So I'll show you where that is before we leave today. But here's basically the fundamental, played as accurately as I can manage. Next line. Slower. Now look, it's just the bass here in measures 3 and 4. And the pinky's just like holding on here. It's just right here. It's kind of your anchor. And now we're going up to this shape. Just a D chord shape up here. And then here it's just more bass. Now we're going to break this down into bass and melody. But basically the overview, I want you to notice that Also, this does not go 5-4-1 like a typical 12-bar blues. It stays on the 1 chord at the beginning of the 3rd line, and then it does this little walk down. That's kind of an A chord, but it's really just a passing bass note. So this doesn't really have that, like, you know, that 5-4-1 thing. These are all like a little, you know, it's a 12-bar form, right? But beyond that, it's got some quirks, right? So 12-bar blues is not this monolithic enterprise. Like, it's very sort of individual, and every song has the potential to be like a little bit different, especially during the period this song comes from, which is the late 20s. Okay, so we're gonna isolate the bass, and I'm gonna get to some questions, but let me run down the horizontal 3-step. So if you're new, this is an idea for how to take apart a page like this into the bass and the melody and put it back together. And the idea is to look at the bass and the melody as these two parallel horizontal events, right? As opposed to looking at it and going, well, let's just measure 1. I have a pinch, and then I have a note, and then I have a note, and then I have a note. I mean, that's important too, but the big picture is to see, oh, this is a 12-bar blues progression, and the way that I'm spelling out the D chord is with this alternating thumb. So I've got 4 bars of that, and that's what I've highlighted. It's just the bass notes, right? You can see that's in the orange bit here. So it's 4 bars of D, and every one of those bars is played the same way with the thumb. So that's all just going to be the same over and over again. When I get to the G chord in the 2nd line, this is what the bass is doing. We have 2 bars of G, and it's always just rocking between the 5th string and the 4th string, and then we're back to D again for 2 more bars. And then in the 3rd line, we have even more D, and then we have this little walk down, and then we have more D. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the measures are the same for the bass. And then these 2 measures are the same as each other. And then there's this walk down. So on this whole page, to play the bass, you only need to know 3 measures worth of music. I find that kind of thrilling, right? It's like there's just, can you do this? Can you do this? And can you do this? And if you can, you got the bass. So the other reason to look at it this way is that when you know how the bass is put together for the whole 12 bars, then when you want to start doing cool variations like a little bass run or change the chord, like you're making changes to a framework that already exists, which is also really helpful. You're just swapping in things instead of learning a whole new thing from scratch. If you can see this bass line as a modular thing built out of repetitions, then when you make a change, you don't have to learn 12 new bars. You just have to swap out a part, swap out 1 bar, and now you've got a whole different way to play the thing. So the bass played all the way through just sounds like this. It's going to be very repetitive, but I'll do it for the sake of completion. Here is just the bass isolated. Measure 3, measure 4, here comes the G chord, measure 5, back to D, 2nd half of the 2nd line. Beginning of the 3rd line, it's D, walk down, and back to D. That's it. That's the bass. Okay, now we're going to isolate the melody. So I've just highlighted the melody. And the main reason to highlight the melody is to start to hear it as a set of phrases, especially on a traditional tune, which was originally a vocal tune, right? So, look at go, just Google the words to Statesboro Blues, or just, if you remember them from hearing it a million times, or go listen to one of the recordings in the playlist that I posted. Just get a verse into your head so that you can, as you're playing the melody on the guitar, you're hearing the words, because that will help you remember the phrasing. And again, if you remember the phrasing, now you're thinking in terms of a song and not just a bunch of numbers on a page of tab, right? And the other thing you can do to practice this is to rest your thumb on a bass string so that your thumb doesn't start trying to play melody notes, and you can start to learn what the fingers need to do. And this is a very squirrely thing to do, so you got to sort of decide. There's a few different ways you can do it, but I would recommend forming the chord shape or just playing the top two notes or just holding this down. And you're going to come down, middle finger, index finger, open, ring finger, and then try to get your index finger back over here so that you then are sort of playing a chord shape again, and then using this middle finger again to play the F sharp for the second time. So and then you can let stuff ring out or not, depending on what you prefer. But it's really two phrases. It's wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. Right? So this is almost like not even part of the melody, unless you sing the word and. Wake up, mama, and turn your lamp down low. Right? But there it is. There's the first. It's a little call and response. First phrase, and then. And the second phrase is a longer variation on the first phrase. So that makes it into two little things. And then we get to here, and it's a variation that takes into account the flat 7 of the G7 chord being in the melody now. And it's the same rhythmic stuff. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So again, if you got that basic syncopation going on, that coordination, you'll be able to play this faster, sooner, I should say. So, again, short phrase, longer answer. And then we get to this part, which is really fun. And that's a D chord shape, just a triad up the neck. So if you're starting on a D here, the next shape up, here's D and F sharp and A, root third and fifth. So we have, and then, and that's just sitting there hanging on that note, just like we hung on it here and here. But it's not syncopated here, as we'll see. But so there's the third line. So it's really this. It's really AAB, just like the words. The words go, wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. That's A. Then they repeat, wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. And then the change up, the punchline in line 3 is, have you got the nerve to turn me from your door? And so this is really the same thing. This is just a variation on this because this is just the same thing with one note change to accommodate the chords. So that's the equivalent of saying, wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low the first time, and then the second time saying, yeah, wake up, mama, turn your lamp, just like some slight variation. That's all that change to the F is. It's just like a slight variation, but it's really the same thing. And then the answer goes somewhere completely different. Right? So that's the melody. And if you can think of it as phrases, you can sort of carry those around in your head and practice them as little licks. And then you can put everything together. And the thumb is very regular. It's always on the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is what you're going to measure everything against. Basically, you're going to look at the melody and go, when am I pinching? Playing a thumb and a finger together. That means I'm on the beat. And when am I playing a finger by itself? That's an and. That's off the beat or a syncopated note. And if you look at what's going on here, you're on the beat at the top of measure 1 and the top of measure 2. Like each phrase kind of kicks off. This is a bit of a pickup, but we start off on the downbeat on beat 1 and on bar 1 and bar 2, and then we're on the downbeat on bar 5 and bar 6, and then on, in this bar 9, and then most of bar. I don't know why this one didn't get highlighted. I guess mine was just out to lunch. I'll fix that. But then all this stuff is on downbeats too. But in between we have all this syncopated stuff. So we've got. And then here comes the next line. And now here comes the turnaround. So those are your, there's like just, that's where it's safe, right? That's where it's like, you're on solid ground with a downbeat, melody matched to the bass. And then in between, everything is just being played on the ands as anticipations or reactions to the bass. So I'll try to leave that bass note out and play it just the straight bass line. And here comes the G. And here's the turnaround. So that's taking it apart and putting it back together. That's basically what's going on. So that's the horizontal three-step. Isolate the melody, isolate the bass, isolate the melody, and then put them back together. And as a preview to all that, spend some time just isolating the rhythm, just isolating what thumb and fingers have to coordinate. And that is pretty much where to start. Okay, I saw a bunch of questions. So I'm going to try to go through and answer some of these. And if you come up with more, please post them as we go. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. And if you need me to play something again or explain something again, I can do that too. But, you know, if you're sort of like, well, what do I do for the week? Like, what's my assignment? It's like, make sure you hit these rudiments at the beginning. Just, even if you're like super intermediate already, just try... Oops, I just realized I took this offline. Just try like spending a little, this is not a huge assignment, but just like 5 minutes just going like, oh yeah, I think I know where the thumb goes, 5 minutes just, oh yeah, let me make sure I can, get these anticipations going. And then a little bit of time just practicing changing chords. Those are just warm-ups really. And then, start isolating stuff. So that's the mission. Okay. Let me see. We got lots of questions here. So let me scoot this over so I can see them and not be totally staring into space. Okay. Lots of folks checking in. I know I saw some questions. Okay. Daniel, I don't know if you're asking me or David Wagner, but I will be at Rocky Mountain this year, Rocky Mountain Guitar Camp, for sure. Okay, Mike, instead of lowering the pitch of the bass string, would you ever raise the other 5 strings using a capo? This would give access to the root of the G chord, actually an A as the key. Yeah. Okay, I've seen that. This became kind of like the hot singer-songwriter trick in the 90s. At least that's the way I remember it. And they make, you can do, people would like cut their capos, or they would buy, started making like 5, like you can get a banjo capo, or people like Shub and other companies started making 5-string capos. But the idea is that you can do it with a regular capo too, as long as it's the clamping kind and not the kind that goes over the whole fingerboard. But the idea is you put on the capo upside down, and now you've effectively raised these guys up 2 frets and left this where it is. And so you can do that. And in theory, now you don't have to adjust, right? There's your G. The whole idea is you can have drop D, but still have a regular G note here. So you could go to this voicing. But you can't do that move, right? You can, it'll work. There are times when I want to have the retuning, because there are things that you can get out of it that you can't get out of the capo trick. But, the ultimately, this is folk music, right? And the fact that there's more than one way to do it is awesome. And so definitely have at it if you'd rather work on it that way. That is totally okay as far as I'm concerned. Just try it both ways and see what's working the best for you. South Dakota, awesome. Hey Joel. Okay, Scott, we answered that question. Let's see. Daniel, maybe just a coincidence, but it could be that the tunes you present in Drop D sound more folky than bluesy. This is the great does alternating thumb automatically sound more folky debate, which I've raged about a couple of times on the YouTube channel. And it may be that I simply haven't gone out of my way to do like something more sort of forcefully bluesy. The closest would be Ivory Ghost. But that's more jazzy, sort of after hours blues. I mean, you can do... can do that kind of steady bass, heavier blues thing. We just haven't done it yet, but maybe we should. Okay, let's see. Oh, Blake, can you go over the fingering for the first two bars of the fundamental? I did, but maybe not in enough detail. So I start off just sort of holding down the chord by default, but then I immediately end up letting go of the index finger. Sorry, there's some glare on the guitar. And throughout all that, I'm just like holding on for dear life with my ring finger, right? So index finger comes in, middle finger comes back. The second half is a lot easier. You're just kind of lifting and dropping notes from the chords. But that first part is kind of the tricky bit. Bringing back. So you could just start off like this. I like to hold down some of the chord because even if you're not going to play it, I don't want to be brushing stuff by accident or whatever. So I try to start with the chord as a default. For that whole second measure, I'm holding this down and then just this is coming up and down. So let me know if that covers it, Blake, and if not, we'll go over it some more. William, when you improvise, aren't you playing a full measure of A in the 10th measure? Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a compromise that I made as I started thinking about how I would solo on this. And again, it's sort of looking at what's the spirit of what's going on. I mean, there's no improvising on the Blind Willie McTell version. I mean, not in the sense of like, he doesn't like go, now I'm going to blow a solo, and like he doesn't stop and play guitar for, 12 or 24 bars. Like that's like a modern idea sort of dropped on top of a traditional way of playing country blues, right? But at least to think of it as like, I'm going to now play like a linear, single note guitar solo while I keep the thumb going. So it's like, well, what's really going on there? Well, as long as you keep the D going for a measure, I mean, really, to be totally hardcore about it, it would be kind of fun to keep the character of it with that descending bass line, right? Or to just say, well, this is really G to A. And I sort of experimented with that a little bit too. So, I mean, when we get to the improvising part, maybe we'll explore a little bit of the details about that. But yeah, I am kind of sitting on A, and that's a little lazy now that I think about it. Like, it wouldn't be that hard. You don't have to have this all the way, because I'm like, what's the balance between honoring what the tune's sort of built like and having some flow, right? And so I think this would be enough, right, for measure 10. There's the G bass line, there's the A, and there's a D bass that's kind of anticipating the return to D. And that actually like leads it into a more interesting place. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, Phil. Playing the piece is one thing and eventually doing that from memory, but do you recommend reading the actual music, i.e. the notes on the stabs, or reading it off the tab? Whatever gets you there. I put in the notation because it's an exercise for me to clarify what's going on. And I've been writing out, every book, every magazine, everybody for the last 30 years always wants notation and tab. We all know almost everybody just looks at the tab. When I would go to proofread my articles for acoustic guitar, I would like scan through the tab and be like, oh, the tab's right. Oh, let me make sure the notation's accurate. It's so much slower for me too. But the notation carries the rhythmic values, and there are certain details the notation gets better than the tab. Like what's going on rhythmically, the stems up, the stems down are designed to tell you stems up is fingers, stems down is thumb. The way the notes are held, the way the grace notes look, the detail is better in the notation. But the big flaw of the notation is it doesn't tell you what string you're on, right? And on the guitar, there's more than one place to do it. So is this note, is it here or is it here? Well, only tab can really tell you that. Unless you get into that whole classical notation thing of putting the little C Roman numeral thing with the little dashes to tell you what position you're at, which I don't have the patience for. Let's just look at the tab. So if you need, if it helps, if the tab's faster, use that. If the notation helps you see the rhythm or the fingerings, use that. If you want to just watch the videos and just, learn it like that, that's what the slow videos are for. You can even take, I think anything that we do on the live stream, since it's on YouTube ultimately, or somehow, it's basically a YouTube video. I think you can basically slow it down. People are always posting in the forum about how to do it. Some people take the tab and they drop it into Sound Slice, and then they can slow it down. And there's a million ways to do it. So there's been conversations about that already on the forum. You can always start another one, and someone will give you tips about that. But I don't care. Pedagogically, it's all the same to me. As long as you can learn the song, I don't care which part of the process works for you. John, these are good questions. Oh, this is fun. Okay, John, I've been a member for 2 quarters. Woohoo! I've noticed that you pluck strings rather than brush them as the D chord in the second to last measure. Any thoughts on plucking versus brushing? Ooh, second to last measure. Like using 2 fingers together as opposed to like that. Yeah, I guess I'd grab everything like that as opposed to this. But there are times when I'll do that. Alternating thumb, not so much. But, when it's more like a... trying to get that sound, then I'll brush all day long, because that's kind of what the idiom is asking you to do. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, just post again so I can clarify that. Okay, new member with my favorite new handle, Vinyl Pants. Awesome. I really want to know more about that. New member here with the question, are the songs graded by difficulty anywhere? Is there a suggested order to learn them? And are the fingerstyle and blues and Travis picking videos? What next? After the fingerstyle blues and Travis picking videos, what next? Awesome question, and this is something that's come up a lot lately. As far as there needs to be more of a game plan available when you first show up as for what to work on. Roughly speaking, just by my own judgment and what I've seen people choose to do, the 6 steps will basically result in you being able to play like a 12-bar blues, not a specific song, but like a full 12-bar blues with some licks and chords and stuff. And the Fix Your Travis Picking series does actually teach you Freight Train. So if you don't know Freight Train yet, or you want to learn like a fancier version of it along the way, then that's, those are good places to start. After that, a lot of people go to play Catfish Blues because that's a 1-chord song, steady bass. Someone recently posted, they were like, I tried that. It was kind of boring. And I'm like, okay, well, it's only 1 chord. But if you want to start, if you don't improvise, but you're interested in starting to, Catfish Blues is kind of the gateway song for that, because the Fundamentals of Improvisation Volume 1 goes with Catfish Blues. So like you learn the tune Catfish Blues, and then the Fundamentals of Improvisation Volume 1 is licks that are just on 1 chord, just on an E. And so it's how to get a whole vocabulary of basic, E blues licks going, which you can then apply to Catfish Blues. Similarly, for a first alternating thumb tune, and coincidentally, also in drop D tuning, Jack of Diamonds is also 1 chord, but in D. So, right? And so, just 1 chord, just some like blues licks on top, and then Fundamentals of Improvisation Volume 2 deals with how to play blues licks over an alternating thumb in D, just on 1 chord. So for that stuff, those are 2 good places to start, because just 1 chord. But some of the other songs that are simpler, I would say either version of Trouble in Mind, because we did it in A and we did it in E, that's a good steady bass tune to work on early on. A lot of people like working on Nobody's Fault But Mine. That's oops. A lot of steady bass in E, and not a lot of chords for the fundamental. So that one's a good one to do. And for alternating thumb, a good starting one, maybe if you're comfortable, or if you're already comfortable playing alternating thumb in C, like if you play a little John Hurt, or you already know Freight Train, then there are some other alternating thumb songs in C. We recently did Nobody's Dirty Business, another John Hurt, not exactly like John Hurt, but in that same kind of style. And there's an early tune of mine, an original called Avalon Dreams, which was also sort of a John Hurt style thing, but with a few extra chords. And Midnight Special is also in C. But C involves the thumb, right? The thumb wrap, and there are some ways around that, but some people find that kind of off-putting. So, one of the alternating thumb songs in D might be fun, like I Shall Not Be Moved, because it's kind of a ballad. Doesn't go by too fast. So those are all a few things. Some of the ones to avoid that I know are hard. I am told Muselicipi Ibis is one of the hardest things here. Not Profundo. Big Surly has like a walking bass line. It's fun, but it's tricky. And one of my early mistakes was an alternating thumb arrangement of Baby Please Don't Go, which took a very, unassuming and simple song and seemed to make it harder than it should have been. So maybe stay away from those at the beginning. Other than that, I leave it up to your fellow folks to chime in here about that. But welcome, and I'm glad you're here, and that's a really good question. Okay. Josh, bars 8 to 10 are tricky. Imagine you didn't know it. How would you practice it? Well, let's see. I would basically get this part knocked out first, because I think this is the easiest part, because it's just pinches, right? And so pinky here, index here. You're going to stay on those strings for the next 2 beats. Right, so that's not too bad. Just doing the same thing over and over again while your index finger moves. And then ring finger to the 6th string. So I'd make sure I could do that. And then I'd go back a measure to measure, that's measure 10. I'd go back to measure 9, and I would make sure I knew this shape. And I would make sure I could get from this shape to this shape as a shape. Like I could just put my hand down like this. There's some exercises for that that we can talk about. But basically, if you can do that, then I would make sure I could do, right, just that, and make that a little 1-measure practice. And maybe even just like start with just the pinch on the downbeat. Can you do that? And then can you do just that? And then can you do, and then can you do, and don't worry about the little pickup phrases, right? So just do, don't worry about any of that. Just do 1, 2, 3, and then do a couple measures of D, just the bass, and then do it again. All the stuff that's on the beat, right? And then eventually 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then work on that part. And just do those 2 bars, the pickup phrase. And then when you can do that, then tack on. And then finally, make sure you can get that little pickup on the and of 4 going into it. But just 1 bar at a time, do the part like within the bar, just like on the beats, and then try to stick a couple bits together, and then worry about like the little syncopations that lead you in and out of what's going on. Good question. Bill says, they are all difficult. All the songs are difficult in the beginning. Great. There is supposed, I mean, you don't have to work there. Well, I did say I would defer to everybody else's experience. There's always a fundamental version of the song, right? So you don't have to learn the whole thing. You can just, if I was coming here brand new, what I would tell me to do is just learn a few fundamentals. Like, don't worry about learning like whole songs right away. Just learn like the fundamental version of a song, and then learn the fundamental version of another one. And don't worry about like doing the whole, like everything embellished, everything intro and outro and all that stuff. I would just learn, just get a few 12 or 8 or 12 bar things under your fingers so you can just sit and play them and feel satisfied. And, you know, that would start to build your confidence in your right hand. But, you know, I'm not the one trying to learn these things necessarily. That's the one big flaw in the system. So if Bill says they're all hard, he would know. He's been around here for quite a while. Oh yeah, the 5/8 bar blues, you should know. That's not a bad place to start either. Abraham. I can't read this out loud. This is just praise. Easy to hard scale. Applies to each song equally. Oh, good. Okay, yeah, what Abraham said. I heard recently, this is Ron. I assume, okay, David Bishop, I assume this is the James Taylor fingering of the D chord, and I don't know what that is, but I'll try to find out. Ron, I heard recently that adding a little quarter tone bend on the flat third sounds good. Is that what you're occasionally doing on the F in measure 10? Yeah. I didn't want to get into all that. I do it when I'm improvising, but it's not built into the arrangement. But this is one of the essential concepts in blues, which is, I used to read about this, you know, especially like, you know, I read this analysis of Mike Bloomfield's playing, and it was talking about his fascination with the microtonal possibilities of bending. And I was like, the what? And all they meant was playing quarter tones, which is basically the thing blues musicians do when they take a note like this, like a flat third, and they don't bend it a half step all the way up to the major third. I mean, that's what, like, you know, that's what a pedal steel does. It goes from the second to the third. and it gets all the way there because it's mechanical. And then chicken picking guitar players learn how to play like a pedal steel. Right, it's going all the way to the major third. But blues wants to take the flat third and bend it towards the major third, but never quite get there, right? If anybody is like got a math background, I do not, but I learned enough to know what an asymptote is, which is it's a parabola or a curve, right? And it's bending towards the y-axis. And as one professor of mine said, do we ever get there? Yes. When? Never. That's what the flat third's doing. It's going towards, in this case, the destination is the major third, not the y-axis. But the idea is we're on our way there, and we cut it off or otherwise bail out before we get there. Because if you went all the way there, it would sound too bright and too shiny, right? It wants to be like, the flat third wants to be a mysterious dude, basically. So that's what's going on with that. Okay. Okay. It's 3:00. Anybody who's got to go, class dismissed if you got to go. But I'm going to sit here and answer a few more of these questions. If any, hyperbola. Thank you. I'll stay here and answer a few more of these questions if you like. Make sure you go say hello on the forum. Tell people where you're from and what you're interested in, and ask questions there. This stream is archived, so if you can't be at a live stream, you can always watch it afterwards. It stays posted for as long as you remember. So you can always come back and watch anything we talked about here. And same goes for, there was a question about this earlier I didn't answer, but same goes for the monthly orientation, which is next Tuesday. And come back for that. You don't have to be a new student to come to it, but I will basically try to address as many beginning questions as possible. I can also, if anybody wants right now, spend a few minutes just giving a bit of an overview of the website, which I'm going to do more of at the orientation. But if anybody's got a burning question about where to find stuff, let me know. Okay, a couple questions I'm just going to try to get to, but like I said, feel free to hop off if you need to go do things. John says, one of the biggest things for me was to practice the bass lines and try to brainwash my thumb. Getting there, but it's a wrestling match. Yeah, I feel you. I'm trying to learn some syncopated stuff with my thumb right now, and it's definitely hard work. Okay. Scott, for measure 10 on the fourth beat, I've been using my middle finger on the fourth beat on the F. Middle finger, let's see. Let me see. For measure 10 on the fourth beat. Measure 10. This feels easier to me because they're sort of closer to each other. And so this feels a little awkward just to scrunch this in. This feels more natural to me because I play my G chord this way. And it's a constant argument in my house, the right way to play a G chord. And I think my way is right. And Ms. Fretboard thinks her way is right. And I'm like, this lets you do so many things. But either one is fine. But so for me, I'm used to this shape. So I don't want to do this because that feels scrunchy to me. But it doesn't matter. Either one will get the job done because that's all you got to hold down. And there's nothing else coming up later where like you'd want to have this here. Like this is the move in all the versions, embellished or otherwise. So it doesn't make a difference. That's a good question too. I feel like there's a couple more questions here. Encouragement from Mike. He's been here a while. He knows. Yeah, Robert, you do not have to do the palm muting. I don't always do it yet. I don't always do it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I default to palm muting, but not always. Let's see. Just some other comments here from David. And yeah, okay. Oh, good. Yeah, all right. Well, so there it is. So that's all the lesson stuff, and that's all the questions that I've seen. So I am just going to do a quick, if it's still here, let me make sure it is. Yeah, let me see if I can make this happen. I'm just going to do a really quick blitz through a few things you should know about the website. Again, if you need to split, this won't take more, I won't spend more than like 5 or 10 minutes on this, right? But basically, here are a couple of things just to know about. So this is the home page, right? And there is a menu up here. The archive will take you straight to the traditional song archive. The forum link will take you straight to the forum. The planner will take you to a set of lessons with exercises for learning the fretboard, how to organize your practice time. There's a printable planner you can fill out with just advice, and there's like a whole set of video lessons about how to use the planner, how to organize your practice time specifically to work on the material here. So if that's something you want to learn more about, go check that out. The theory is a set of beginning theory lessons aimed specifically at guitar. So if you want to brush up on that or you've never done it, I take pride in the fact that it is actually a somewhat efficient and coherent set of theory lessons, in my opinion. And then the foundations is important because that will take you over here, which will show up as a separate course in your library, but I had to put these things somewhere. Here are all the past orientations, and in some cases, I have done a very specific orientation just on the 3-month format, or just on what's in the traditional archive, or here's the traditional song archive. Here's a whole explanation of like what's a vamp, what's a shout chorus, what's a 7-step arc. So you can go here, and I mean, they're long, right? They're all like hour-long streams. I don't know who's got that kind of time, right? But if there's a specific thing you want to understand more about, then you can go in there and find those. And then this is also where you can find the Fix Your Travis picking lessons with Freight Train and 6 Steps to Playing Fingerstyle Blues. These did appear on YouTube originally, but now they've been cut up into smaller short videos, so they're easier to sort of get through, and there's better tab. And then these are live streams I did in the fall and the winter, where I went through all of this lesson material in a live stream format. Again, it's like hours of stuff, but if you want to sort of like take a deeper dive on those topics, then go for it. This is last fall's masterclass, and I'll post the spring masterclass on here sometime soon. Haven't had a chance to get to that yet, but I will. Here's the calendar for the orientations. Here is the calendar for Crojane Redux. And then back at the main page, this button will take you back to the main page. Here are some important things to know about. This will all get sort of moved into the archive in a minute. This is the current stuff for Statesboro Blues. So if you click on this, here's all the short videos, and then here are the links for the next couple of live streams. So when you want to watch this live stream again, come back here. It will be archived in the same place that you went to watch it. And if you click through on YouTube, it takes about a day to happen, but all the chat will be archived too, along with the video. And then next week's Embellished is here, and then the third week's Vamps are here. So you can come back and watch all these short videos. And the last thing I want to just point out before we go, you can go into either the traditional or contemporary archive to find stuff. This is all of the fundamentals of improvisation stuff. And then if you're new, there are a couple other places you might want to go. Here's the theory stuff. Here's the practice planner. You can get to it here. And then this is sort of neglected. I need to put this in a better place. But the core concepts, these are just some basic ideas about groove and learning the fretboard, about learning a repertoire, some ideas about arranging and improvisation. They are from quite a while back, but they have some, I think, helpful overview about what we're doing here. Craig, yes, where can you find the live streams? The live streams are archived with their respective songs. So if you go into the song archive and you want to see the live streams for Nobody's Dirty Business, just click on Nobody's Dirty Business. And here are all the short videos. And then these with the white on top, these are the live streams. So here are the live streams for the fundamental, embellished, and the vamp for Nobody's Dirty Business. Here are the arranging lessons. And then one thing that needs to be reorganized, again, I know I say that a lot, the improvisation lessons are in the fundamentals of improvisation area. So that's how that works. So those are some things just to keep an eye out for. But most importantly, over here, there's a hot link just to get you straight to the forum, to the song index, to the improvisation lessons, to the foundation stuff, and to Crow Jane. And then if you're having any trouble with your login, your password, your payments, your credit card, any of that stuff, click on here and it'll send an email that I will see, but it will get addressed by Mary, who takes care of all that kind of stuff. And she is amazing and really fast. So any questions about that, go there. And if you want to try to, get in and deal with your own issues yourself, like canceling or fixing your credit card or anything like that, it's in here. This is where your account is up here on the right where your picture is or where your not picture is. So that is the story. So again, I'll go into all of this in more detail on Tuesday, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview on some of those things. And really the best search engine is the forum. There are people who have been doing this for over 5 years now, and they know where everything is. And you can get an answer really fast because it's like crowdsourcing the problem. Just go to the forum, ask where something is, and someone will tell you really fast. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. Let's see. The dog is not here today, Ruben. Sometimes she is, but she's at home. Okay, that was the links to the live streams. Okay, I think that's it, everybody. Thanks for being here. This was lots of fun. Really excited to see all the new folks here. And please don't hesitate to reach out. I will be keeping an eye on the forum, especially during these first couple of weeks when we've got all these new people. If you're really stumped, send me an email. Forum's usually faster, but if it's really important, I'll try to get to it. And I will see you